Good afternoon and welcome to the beginning of the second half of the third day of CogX. It's a great privilege to welcome you here into the Financial Services and FinTech channel. And we're about to begin a session exploring insurance in the COVID era. We're going to learn about the technology and the cultural impact of COVID during this era. And we're fantastically lucky to be joined by an awesome panel. My name's Ben Brabin, and I've spent 20 years in FinTech. Most recently, I've been running Level 39, and now I'm running a campaign called GeniusShares, which is really designed to help organizations to be on the right side of history through and out the other side of this pandemic. But let's turn to what it means for the insurance industry in particular. So we are incredibly fortunate to be hosted by the legendary Shân Millie. Shân, over to you.
Oh, I love being described as legendary by you, Ben. I hope that doesn't make me too shallow. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Shân Millie. I'm a self-confessed obsessive on insurance and innovation, and I'm really, really grateful to be your facilitator today. So as we know, CogX's theme this year is getting the next 10 years right. And we know also that date's not arbitrary. We're all facing a looming deadline, actually, not limiting warming to 1.5 degrees by 2030 will result in modelable and terrifying impacts. So transitioning to an economy that can deliver on that limit requires resilience, focus, and collective problem solving on a scale that we're only now just truly getting our heads around. So through one lens then, COVID is a live test of how we adapt or not to such a systemic risk. How do definitions of organisational resilience and leadership change as a result? Are those changes permanent? So whilst this session is focusing on insurance, I suggest it's for anyone and everyone wanting to learn about real life, individual and organisational resilience, transformation under pressure, and where and how technology, culture and other factors come into play. And I'm really thrilled to be bringing you three individuals personally involved in steering a course through the pandemic and working out next steps for the firms and people they work with. So in a moment, I'm going to ask Kath, Declan and Sabine to introduce themselves to you. They'll take about 3 minutes each, and then we'll use our allocated time for discussion to around 12:45 or so, when you know we have a scheduled comfort break. You'll also know that there's an opportunity for you to put your questions direct via Slido from about 1 p.m. Okay, so let's get started. Kath, coming to you first, please tell us about yourself.
Hi there, I'm Kath Mainon. I work in the Davies Group, and my job is that I'm CEO of Claims Solutions in Davies Group. So my day job, if you like, is that I deliver claims handling services across all classes of claims on behalf of insurers to their customers and to their third-party claimants. My claims teams handle about 500,000 claims a year. My claims teams in UK and Ireland are about 1,500 people, and before the pandemic, of my people, about 150 of them were home-based. So that's people like adjusters and surveyors and engineers. So it follows that the vast majority, 1,300 or so of my claims people, worked at desks, mainly in big offices, working in teams of 10 or 12, often client-dedicated teams. Working together in those teams, working shift patterns within teams to make sure that we cover all the hours that our clients need us to operate, working to SLAs, handling calls, working together in hunt groups to deliver our service levels. That's my day job. Along came the pandemic, and within Davies, my key role in relation to the pandemic was to plan and deliver the lift and shift of our claims desk services into a home working environment. So I was responsible for making sure that our teams and our processes and our SLAs all came back to normal within a few days, in circumstances that were very far from normal. It was part of my role to communicate with our clients, to explain to them the adjustments and modifications we were making to continue to deliver services. It was part of my role to communicate with my people. And a really key part of my role in the pandemic was to think about those 1,300 people who had to make the change from desk to home working. 1,300 people who were already in a situation of stress and concern at a social and personal level because of the pandemic, and had to deal with the added change and stress of moving to a new working environment and having to help them adapt to that working environment. So that's my day job, and that's what I've been doing in helping to deliver insurance services in the pandemic.
So much, Kath. Declan, over to you.
Hi, Shân, and hi, everyone that's listening. My name's Declan Burke. I work in an IT service delivery and business engagement role for a company called MS Amlin. We're a leading insurer and reinsurer with operations in the Lloyd's of London, UK, continental Europe and Bermudian markets. And I personally work with the global $2 billion reinsurance business to help them, really deliver operational excellence within the technology space. Making sure the platforms are reliable and well controlled. I seek to create value, I guess, through data and technology related change, whether that's to address operational efficiency or market competitiveness. And ultimately, my goal is to build strong partnership-based relationships. My background is around 20 years experience in business technology roles across the banking and financial services sector. I have an MBA from Kingston Business School, and I'm a published author in IT integration in mergers and acquisitions, which is an area that I'm deeply interested in. When the pandemic hit, I understand a number of insurance businesses did struggle. They either weren't prepared or organisationally resilient enough, I guess, to adapt their operating model at short notice. I've seen during this time how technology leadership combined with agile and secure technology platforms became a critical factor in order for insurance businesses to continue operating effectively. And I've been lucky enough to be a technology lead on a program which tackled, global culture, workplace, and technology over the last couple of years. And I'm really aware of how inefficiencies and idiosyncrasies within organisations, global infrastructures can, and this is particularly relevant in insurance, can be detrimental to companies' operational effectiveness, particularly in times like we've just been through. Anyone working in insurance, particularly in a technology role, will be familiar with the reasons for that. And, these include legacy infrastructure, the mobility and the security of our corporate and BYOD devices, online collaboration tools, either deployed poorly or not at all, and, business processes that rely on hard copies of documentation and wet signatures. Looking forward at the future of work, I've seen a survey recently of 800 insurance professionals suggesting that 22% of people would like to carry on working from home on a full-time basis. 57% want to certainly see flexibility between work and home life, and 15% don't want to return at all. Don't want to return to an office at all. So, for me, it's clear how accelerated technology alignment has played a really key role in building and maintaining operational resilience during this pandemic. And, for me, importantly, how important the role of technology leadership becomes going forward.
Very much, Declan. Sabine.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sabine van der Linden. I'm the former CEO and co-founder of Startup Bootcamp InsurTech here in London and Hartford InsurTech Hub in Connecticut in the USA. I am just one day away from launching a new venture, so check your LinkedIn tomorrow. But I have over 20 years experience in insurance, and I've learned from the big players, the tech players, and the nimbler entrants as to how to create leaner business models and reinvent the insurance value chain. I've been very fortunate during the past 5 years to not only work with corporates, large companies, but also to accelerate over 60 startups across the globe. These businesses in total have raised now up to 200 million and around valuation around 400 million. So not bad. Some of them are done amazing post-COVID, during COVID, and there are inspiring businesses and stories actually to learn from as we emerge from this pandemic. So today I work closely with those young ventures that include startups and grown-up with insurers and helping insurers to improve the way they do innovation with ventures through a very specific engagement model, accelerated engagement model. There have certainly been huge learnings recently, new innovative thoughts and approaches coming out from COVID. Amazing, inspiring stories. For me, during the past 12 weeks, I've discussed the impact of pandemic with not only insurers, but with young ventures. And so different responses and behaviors. Those ranged from, we'll stop everything and think, to continuing business as usual, as we were prepared for it. I've seen companies sending massive amounts of laptops to those who needed it the most, often claims departments, underwriters, and also now having conversation with businesses which are actually trying to accelerate the virtualization and automation and digitalization of their organization to move to remote work for a lot of them. I also have seen a situation where amazing companies have been giving back to society. They have been also trying to help whenever they could. Those would include often younger ventures, and actually also thinking out of the box as to how to be disruptive. I'm sure many of you have seen the stories of Spotify, Peloton, Ziggo, and Media, who have been helping customers and users during those times of difficulties.
Sabine, thanks very much. Okay, so that's a bit more about your panel. And so now let's plunge in then to using our time wisely to cover quite a large range of issues, I know. So we're going to kick off with, I suppose, one of the burning questions, and I'm going to come to you first, Declan. I mean, we both know, and you've spent 20 years fighting the good fight in different ways, that insurance, and you also know that I don't think this is necessarily fair, but it would be fair to say that there is a general sort of view that insurance is not exactly where you'd look first, or possibly at all, for any kind of competency in leadership and technology. So what do you think about whether or not insurance has actually lived down to its reputation of technological backwardness during this pandemic so far?
I love the wording of your question, and I think it's a very pertinent question to ask. When I started in the insurance sector in 2016, I was surprised by the routine rigidity, I guess, and the affection for legacy working practices. You have to look around you in the at number 1 Linden Street, and technology operational resilience really consisted of a number of sort of tick box disaster recovery and business continuity exercises. Then the onset of the pandemic, I had a number of conversations with very concerned insurance professionals. One senior underwriter, I remember him suggesting that we're going to need to order 150 or so digital scanners to allow us to continue working from home. I spoke with a claims colleague who insisted that they would all need to be able to physically print documents in order to be able to review them like they would in the office. And it's clear, there was a desire to replicate how things had always been done in the office, and not necessarily use the situation as an opportunity to challenge the status quo. In a broader sense, I have witnessed many colleagues in the industry respond in a much more entrepreneurial and innovative way. I've seen updates from the likes of Jennifer Rigby, the COO at Lloyd's, outlining how they're accelerating some of their technology innovations at pace, such as the automation of low-value claims, for example, development of their online electronic placement platform, and evolution of the room, so that the room is the facility at number 1 Linden Street. And going forward, I think we're going to see a combination of the best of that physical operating model to one that supports and embeds the latest in insurtech developments.
Okay, just to probe you a little bit there. I mean, in terms of how much or not that situation of legacy systems, and yes, my God, we've been talking about legacy systems since I started getting interested in insurance in 2008, which feels long enough. Kath, I'm sure you will have even a longer memory than that, only because you've been working.
Thank you.
Nothing else for that, obviously. So Declan, how bad was it broadly? I'm not asking you to talk about Amlin, but how backward was it? And compared to what you might see in other areas of the economy, other sectors, was it really that bad, or was it just a convenient way to say, why aren't you buying more of our stuff from tech vendors and startups wanting to sell into the insurance sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly it's important to note, and this won't be unfamiliar to people that work in insurance and technology roles, and I don't think it's specifically relevant just to insurance. Many organisations have grown organically over the last number of years. That's, they've acquired businesses, they've bolted on businesses, and they've not integrated probably in the way that would make sense. Therefore, they're left with a lot of fragmented, disconnected and complex operating environments that often, akin to a sort of patchwork quilt of different applications, some in data centres, some in cupboards in offices and so on. And, that causes operational challenges. Of course, now we've seen, a shift to sort of more cloud technologies, which, support mobility and agility. We've worked with my particular business to help digitize some of the manual processes. An example of that was, our yacht business, where we managed to digitize the process for printing and sending documents in the post to brokers.
Okay, all right. So, Kath, then I'm going to put this question to you, since, as I pointed out, you are
a veteran. I'm a veteran, Shân.
So, did we live down to our reputation, or did we confound that reputation, Kath? What do you think?
I honestly think that our reputation, in terms of use of technology, improved significantly during the COVID pandemic. When I compare us with some other industries, when I interact as a consumer outside of work with some other industries, I'm shocked every time I try and ring somebody up or try and go online and do something, and it's not business as usual, because I think by and large, my business, my clients, and most of the businesses I'm in touch with and talking to in the insurance sector have managed to quickly mobilize their technology, and by and large, we're delivering business as usual. So I'm pretty proud of what we've done, actually.
Okay, thank you. Sabine, what's your view?
I mean, I've heard great stories, of insurance companies mobilizing assets, as we've heard around the underwriting claim staffs. We also seen in the price, for instance, that around 35, I think there were around 35 insurers who provided, rebates and discounts to policyholders, partly the one with auto insurance, motor insurance, and they could not drive those cars. So there's been, some good reaction from insurance companies. And I think where there's been a bit of failings is around for some players. There's always, people who are better at technology than others. Where claims have been denied and claims are still not being settled. What I also saw from those organizations I talk to all the time is many have gone the extra mile by providing free policies and supporting their users in a variety of ways. I mentioned earlier Zego. Zego actually relocated gig economy drivers and they tend to focus on the food delivery drivers and across the range from Deliveroo to Uber Eats. And what they did is to use those people and enable them to be part of the logistic delivery and transportation system to support the delivery of all the packages we are ordering, for example, from Amazon and other players. So enabling e-commerce businesses which were digital to get the goods and services we want digitally. And that required more people on the road, different type of people on the road to actually perform those logistical deliveries.
Yeah.
I've also seen businesses in health. You probably heard some of the great stories with some of the startups putting COVID-19 checks and those being accessible for free to enable, sufferers to access hospital, nurse, doctors, therapists near their home as soon as possible, but using their ecosystem to accelerate the identification of potential COVID-19 sufferers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those great examples from different parts of insurance. That's really interesting. So I'm wondering, the question, I guess, is also, one of the key questions is, what was there already, potentially, in the way that organisations were set up, designed, driven by or articulating a certain purpose, that made it easier, and I use that phrase advisedly, to do the kinds of transformation on the hoof, as it were, that we have seen as a result of the pandemic. Kath, what's your view on how well-equipped Davies already was going into the pandemic by virtue of the stuff that you'd already been doing?
So from a technology point of view, I was actually blown away by how quickly my IT colleagues were able to transform us into a home working environment. So I really didn't have to worry about kit and infrastructure and things like making sure that we could monitor and measure our telephony standards. We do that in the office using wallboards that are visible to everybody. And I was amazed by how quickly we could replicate that on people's laptop screens at home. So from a technology point of view, I guess we were closer than I would have imagined. And I think it's the cloud-based thing that Declan referenced. We were closer than I would have imagined to being able to do that with ease. From a more sort of cultural, organisational point of view, having reflected on this and reflected on how quickly we made changes, how much we had to ask of people in terms of change to their working lives and working patterns. And one of the things I think has been really important for us is just high degrees of trust at all levels. So we have trusted people to work from home and to work flexibly and to work around childcare. And we've been making lots of decisions about how to work and how to deploy resource and how to keep people safe and keep on delivering service. And through all of that, I felt I felt that the response of our people tells us that they are trusting us to get those calls right for them.
And so where's that trust coming from, Kath? Because that's massively important, isn't it? I mean, for us as a sector, in your ability to get things done with and for colleagues.
Completely. And I don't think at all that you create that trust the day the pandemic is announced or the day the lockdown is announced. That's way too late. I think that I and we as a senior management team leveraged, have been supported by the trust that was already there in our organisation. And I think that trust has been glue, really, that helped us all stick together as we've gone through all these difficult changes.
Yeah, and I know. Sorry, go ahead.
The point is, it was there. We've benefited massively from it.
But it didn't get there by accident either, Kath, did it? Because I know from our previous conversations, it was engineered, right? It wasn't just kind of cross your fingers and hope trust comes. Maybe there are a couple of examples of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, engineered sounds like a sort of cold, hard, clinical word in the context of building trust. But you are right, Shân. You have to do things to have a culture and an environment of trust. You have to be, as a leadership team, you have to be open and you have to be communicative. You have to have a track record, I think, of being people-centred, so being seen to be fair and decent and reasonable in all your dealings with people. And with that track record, you go into something like a pandemic with people knowing, taking it for granted, that you will approach decision-making in that same fair and reasonable way.
Yeah, great, thank you. Declan, then, thinking about those attributes that may already have been in place with regard to where you're at the moment, any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really good points by Kath. I think if the pandemic had hit, you know, the insurance sector 3 or 4 years ago, we would have been much less prepared. What I have seen, certainly in the last 2 or 3 years, is new, you know, forward-thinking leadership that's coming in, focusing on culture, workplace, and you know, technology coming in to underpin that. I was lucky to be part of a program called Work Life Better that was initiated by our former CPO Vivian Leinster, and you know, it broke down the barriers of the traditional, you know, you work 9 to 5 in the office. You know, it instilled the trust which Kath mentioned and empowered colleagues to go about their work days as they seem fit. And, you know, as a technology lead on that program, it was my role to make sure that our systems were mobile, were agile, flexible, and so on. And, you know, that involved a number of upgrades of capacity, security, and so on and so forth. We done things to make people's working from home experience more comfortable, such as the issuance of laptop stands and wireless keyboards and mice and headsets and so on. And we implemented interactive collaboration tools so that colleagues could work more effectively, you know, in remote settings, and also to enable important leadership communications to address the remote workforce.
Okay, thank you. Sabine, I'd like to move us on, actually. I'd like to talk about innovation under pressure. And I know that your knowledge extends, you know, your knowledge is massive in startups and scale-ups and ecosystem building, but I know it also extends beyond that. But I really would like to sort of get your views at this moment in time as to how you think those startups and scale-ups that you know and work with and invest in some cases, how they manage to innovate under pressure, because they're fledgling businesses. Just because they're new businesses, you know, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to cope with this kind of unprecedented set of pressures than anybody else. So share some views, would you, on that?
I mean, well, it's clear that COVID has exacerbated new behaviors, but also has highlighted that there are a few which are very important. I mean, when you look at the digital business, they are fortunate to be digital first. You know, they work on emerging technology, new technology, so they often are comfortable to work remotely. They are comfortable to help other automates. I mean, we've seen some amazing situation where organizations which had not thought about basic digitization have reached out to some of those cognitive intelligence players to just implement basic chatbot and conversational AI to enable those people who are actually working from home and cannot be in the call center anymore to get call rerouted, but only the call which are the most important to them. At the same time, what you find is good businesses, and I think I'll echo some of the point that Declan and Kath highlighted. You still need, you know, really good leadership within those businesses because they are still dealing with people, and so they need to make sure that they are not arrogant. I mean, you often see in young businesses CEOs which sometimes can be arrogant. They actually have to demonstrate humility and kindness, and also often, you know, they work from, you know, co-working space often, and those people who are in those co-working space have moved to work from home. I think from a new entrant viewpoint, there are some characteristics which is very important, that they tend to recruit people based on right character traits rather than on roles. And as you work for young businesses, you need to have this ownership mindset to drive trust within the business. So even though you work remotely, you know, people are not checking on you all the time. So that will be very important. But they also have learned to be adaptable because often, you know, young businesses have always cash flow issues. Yeah. So they actually have learned from that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Sort of balanced scorecard then, really. Tech, yes. Culture, maybe stuff to learn. And then just the realities of being in business under this type of pressure. Yeah, I mean, everybody's got to learn from that, right? Being digital first doesn't insulate you from that automatically. Great, thank you very much. So what I'd like to do now is to move all of us on to think about leadership and what that means. I do laugh to myself because when I was writing down again, I was obviously reviewing my stuff this morning, and I found myself writing down remote leadership. And I did laugh to myself because on the one hand, Kath, I know we've talked about, you know, what does being a leader mean when you can't actually be face to face with your staff? And I do want to talk about your colleagues. But also remote leadership could actually be a description of what we've had up to now organisationally, right? However, I mean, that's not just for very large organisations and dispersed organisations like yours and Declan's, but also to a certain degree, it kind of echoes what Sabine was saying about even small businesses can have, quotes, remote leadership, right? So if I can ask you, do you think there's a before and after in what is now going to be the sort of collected or working hypothesis of what makes great leadership at all levels, obviously, but particularly as a CEO, where there's a good deal more pressure, right, by definition? Before and after, is it a spectrum of change? What are your views on that?
It's definitely an acceleration, I think, Shân. So reflecting on what's gone well for us as we've worked through COVID, and I've done quite a lot of thinking about how our senior management team work together. And I mentioned in my opening comments that I had quite a lot to do with all of my operations managers, moving the operation out of these big offices into remote working from home was challenging. There were loads of operational details for us to get right. And we felt liberated, we felt able to concentrate on getting all that operational and people stuff right, because I knew that other people had my back. Other people in our highest level senior management team had my back. I knew that IT had my back in terms of getting kit out and getting infrastructure sorted and working through hundreds, if not thousands, of niggles and glitches. I knew that HR were working just as hard, reaching out to vulnerable people and providing my managers with training on specific remote management techniques. So what I think it's highlighted for me is the importance of having collaborative leaders. We all put our day-to-day divisional, personal priorities aside and work together for the greater good. I've always thought that collaboration was fantastic, essential quality in senior leadership. I think my experience is that going forward, we all value those particular qualities even more highly.
So do you think it's the end then of that famous don't bring me problems, bring me solutions type approach that you're supposed to have allegedly? Maybe it's just my age, Kath, but I too grew up in the command and control was the way to do it era.
Yeah. I think the way I put it is that a sort of competitive, ego-driven senior leadership team would find it really hard to get through something as unprecedented as COVID.
Okay, great. Sabine, your views. What do you think is the gold standard for insurance leadership? And do you think, again, the before and an after, or do you think it's been on a journey too?
I think it's been on the journey. I mean, I've been fortunate to work with amazing businesses for the past many years, but 5 years, when you do innovation, you start looking at very different behaviors, and you've met many of them yourself. I think care and being a good listener, because I think out of the thing, what we may, see with people working from home is potentially new things happening, new emerging risks coming out, like mental health, which seems to become a big topic that I hear over and over again from many players out there. I mean, there is a recent Gartner studies which said that 74% of CFOs were likely to move employees to remote work permanently, and that would be on average 25%. But at the same time, it's fine to have all the technology enablement. And as a result, you need the right leadership because you need to actually watch out for people's health. One thing is, when you start working from home and people can't see what you are doing, people tend to work a bit harder, potentially in longer hours. And so this is not right. Some studies shows that the UK and the USA actually are probably some of the countries with the highest level of depression, stress, and anxiety. And with COVID, that increased between 35 and 40%, actually. Looking at young people, like the graduates, those guys, when they come out of school, they want to network, they want to learn, they want to have a body. So the office was their dream. So all this need to be watched out, I think, from a leader's viewpoint.
So if you were hiring for a leader at whatever level, in whatever role, yes, but maybe we'll focus on a CEO, okay? If you were putting together your person spec, Sabine, what would be on it? And what would you be filtering out?
For a CEO, I'll take out ego, you have to be humble, modest. I mean, you have a long list, right? Understated, you have to focus on people all the time, focus on training and talent. It's not about the jobs. I mean, for sure, job is important, roles are important, but it's about the characteristic and the traits of people. And then, this ownership mindset, I love working with people that, Sabine, I'm going to take that away from you and I'm going to learn from it. And I will just knock on your door when I'm lost. I like that.
Okay. All right. So, Dec, coming to you then, leadership, right? So, share your views. What do you think? Is it going to be easier to be a global technology partner for a business with a different mindset from leadership, wherever that sits? But for you, most often it's at board, right? Trying to get things through and decisions and conversations had. What's your view on that?
You're right, and it's a great question. And Kath and Sabine have already raised some great points. I think the motivational factors have changed for, a remote workforce working in a different way. Creativity and innovation is going to become, as if not more important now, as businesses seek to become more competitive. And the management, or the leadership rather, of the individuals that can develop the new platforms, deliver the new user experiences and underpin that with the necessary technology. They need to feel like they're part of a journey, right? This is where leadership communication really is going to become imperative. We can provide the technology tools, the collaboration platforms for the senior leaders to cascade their vision. There's new techniques that we're seeing senior leaders using, blogging, vlogging, etc. I've seen that used to a good extent in my current organisation. And those are the skills that leaders are going to need to really develop. Technologists, creative technologists, which is what we need now, and need to feel like they're part of the story. And where do they fit in? It's time to stop talking about the what and the how, and now start focusing on the why.
And by the why, I know, I'm not going to pretend I don't know. The why is the organisational purpose, right? That's what you're talking about.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, and
so,
I've seen strong CEOs, strong leaders talk about why their business exists, and make it relevant to the people that are working within that business. And that gives people motivation in itself, right? And you create this pull style of leadership instead of as the old-fashioned command and control style of management that you referred to earlier.
Yeah, but let's get real though, right? There are no rankings of insurance firms that I'm aware of that major on leadership as opposed to results, are there?
Well, good leadership should bring good results.
Oh, okay, all right. Yes, interesting. That is obviously true, right? Okay, so in terms of the interplay that we've been talking about today between culture and technology, and as you so eloquently said, Declan, the technologists can provide the collaboration platforms and all the great tech, but actually that's just a shell if it's not populated by the right mindset and training and purpose and trust and all the things that you've been talking about too, Kath. I'm talking to three people who obviously not only have experience, but also I think represent in each of your areas. I mean, because in my mind, we have technology, we have CEO leadership and claims, and we have ecosystem building and innovation broadly. You're all forward thinking and progressive in your ideas, right? So obviously I've got a filtering bias going on in the people that I've brought together for this conversation. But we don't live in a world that's populated mostly by people like you, do we? All three of you at the moment. So I suppose my question is, as we come to the end of our panel session, are you optimistic? Are you seeing real permanent change in all the things that we've talked about? The awareness about that tech gets you only so far, that culture and other organizational issues are really important. Are you optimistic that there are going to be some permanent changes coming out of this? Or do you fear that it might not be that permanent? Sabine?
I believe it will be permanent, actually. I mean, Declan highlighted a key word, creativity. I think, there is great technology out there, like, AI and all those things, cognitive intelligence. And I think we are seeing that movement around ethical AI, where, it's fine to implement in technology, but if you don't have any understanding of how that is going to impact your business, it can have positive but also negative effect. So I think the future leaders and the future CEOs or, whoever that management team is, have to embed much more empathetic behaviors for the future. I do believe
you think that lesson's been learned. You think generally that's been learned. Okay, thank you. Kath.
Hi, I'm back.
Did you catch my question? Because I know you've had a little few tech issues there.
No, I'm so sorry. I missed your question, Shân.
My question was, I was basically saying you guys are representative of a progressive mindset, in my view, and people who are actually making a difference. But we don't live in a world populated by people like you, more than, you're not in the majority yet, would be my working hypothesis. So do you think all the stuff that we've been talking about, the great stuff that we've been talking about today around culture and technology and where the boundaries are and trust and purpose, do you think that's something we'll still be talking about when we're living in a post-vaccine world, or do you think it's a flash in the pan now?
I don't think it's a flash in the pan. I think we were on a progressive journey anyway, Shân, because I think that organisations and leaders who demonstrate those really important qualities are increasingly tending to be the more successful organisations and leaders. And I think COVID and whatever future shocks we may experience intensify that evolution.
Okay. Declan, what do you think?
Yes, I think, clearly people's eyes have been opened, leaders' eyes have been opened to the fact that their businesses can continue operating in an efficient or inefficient way, a roundabout way, without, hundreds, thousands of staff occupying, premium floor space in the city of London, £1 million a floor in the Linden building or wherever it is. And, therefore I think operating models will be reviewed. I think, again, going back to the point about how we manage team environments and the technology that sit around that. But importantly, a number of organisations that are having their digital agendas accelerated at this time, and I really do expect that momentum to continue.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We've come to the end of our panel session, actually. So thank you very much. Hopefully, we'll welcome you back in about 15 minutes. But Ben, I think it's over to you to say that bid us all farewell for the time being.
Shân, thank you. And the whole panel, thank you all very much indeed. What a fantastic trip we've had through the future of and the current state of the insurance industry. As I've listened, I've heard all sorts of words which I'm hoping are prompting questions among some of the audience. And I see we've already got a fantastic stream of questions coming in. The Q&A session starts in 1/4 of an hour. So if you still haven't quite formulated that question, you've got 1/4 of an hour to make a cup of tea, think it through, and submit the question, and then rejoin us to hear the answers. In the meantime, a couple of thoughts. What seems to have emerged is that the technology, creative technology in particular, is really coming to the fore, but that we're out of the era of command and control now. We're in an era in which personal qualities in leadership really stand to the fore, in which particularly perhaps trust is the bedrock of every organization's success and its prospects. So thank you all, panel, for bringing that to our attention, and thank you, audience, for joining us now and rejoining us where your tickets permit in 15 minutes for Q&A. Thank you all very much.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.